I'm gonna have to look at what Brother Joshua just sent a message to Telegram. Let me see what he said. All right. We're live, everyone. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug with the Waking by Yahuwah Assembly in Yahuwah Almighty Yahushua Messiah. Today we are going to be continuing our Sabbath day studies. We are going to be doing starting, and I'm sorry, I see someone's trying to get in here. Let me help Brother Yahusha here. Okay, so we're going to be starting Song of Songs, guys. My mom is going to start us off at chapter 1 of Song of Songs. Shabbat Shalom, Brother Yahusha. So whenever you're ready, Mom.
Okay, I'd just like to mention that there's different people speaking in this book. So we have in my Bible it says, beloved, and then it says lover. So, just that's what makes it a little different than normal books. Okay, here we go. Entitled Beloved, Solomon's Song of Songs. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the maidens love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. The king has brought me into his chambers. Now, this is actually friends, this says. We rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. I just want to note a second. Okay, just says it's masculine. Okay, now we're with beloved again. How right they are to adore you. Dark am I, yet lovely. O daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyard. My own vineyard I have neglected. Tell me, you whom I love, where you graze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday. Why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends? Okay, and this is lover. If you do not know, most beautiful of women, follow the tracks of the sheep and graze your young goats by the tents of the shepherds. I liken you, my darling, to a mare harnessed to one of the chariots of Pharaoh. Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you earrings of gold studded with silver. Beloved. While the king was at his table, my perfume spread its fragrance. My lover is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. My lover is to me a cluster of henna blossom from the vineyards of Engedi. Lover. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful your eyes are dove. Beloved. How handsome you are, my lover. Oh, how charming. And our bed is verdant. Lover. The beams of our house are cedars, and rafters are firs. Chapter 1.
Okay. So yeah, so just to remind everyone, Song of Songs, Solomon's writing to basically, I would believe it's one of his wives. Um, it's also supposed to be foreshadowing um how Messiah feels about his bride. That's
Right,
kind of the point of this
right.
book, is not just to look at a fleshy sense, but to look at a sense of how Yahuwah sees us. And I think that's where the actual inspiration value comes from, is how Yahuwah sees Israel. Um And it's also to show us men how we should look at our wives. We really love our wives. So I think that's probably there's some value in that too. Um, so let's see my mate. Yeah, a lot of this is poetic, like he's comparing the cheeks of her face to turtle doves in verse 10. Um, which again, turtle doves are like they're supposed to symbolize purity. A dove is symbolizing the ruach. So I think that's why he's using that bird specifically to symbolize her face. Uh, let's see. Your eyes are doves, verse 15 again. So he's comparing her beauty to doves.
Mm-hmm. Fragrance is involved, sachet of myrrh.
And this is what I mean by you have to have a decent amount of um maturity as a man or a woman
Yeah.
to read stuff like this because in the first verse it says, "Let him kiss me from his mouth's kisses, for your breasts are too beyond wine."
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I recommend if there's any brothers, sisters still struggling with lust, still
Yeah.
struggling with fornication, don't read this book.
Mm-hmm.
This book is probably not the best book to read if you're still struggling with a typical sin like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a forewarning and wisdom. I'm trying to give you some scriptural wisdom here that if you're struggling with a typical sin like that, this is probably not the book to be reading. Only because it is very. There are certain verses that are very physically intimate, provoking in your thought process. There is going to be some physically intimate language being used since he's talking about his wife and vice versa. She's talking about him. Um, Now, again, I don't want to get on a side topic here, but verse 5 says, "I am black and beautiful,
Yeah.
O daughters of Jerusalem, like covers of Kedar." Now, I have to I have to bring about that point that she is calling herself of dark skin and she's calling herself a daughter of Jerusalem. So again, are those
Mm-hmm.
people over there really Judeans when you see things like this in scripture? So just saying, there's little verses here and there that show the Israelites were of a darker complexion
Mm-hmm.
than us Westerners, us Italians,
Mm-hmm.
us Polish, whatever you are. If you're of Caucasian persuasion, I don't think we can, claim ethnically to be the people of the book when you
Right.
see stuff like that. So just saying. Anyway, but
Are you saying that the Black Hebrews? No, I'm just kidding.
I do think they're a lot darker than me and my mom are. I'll just put it that way. Um, when Yahusha had to hide in Egypt,
Oh yeah.
Ham was Ethiopia, so Ham brought forth Egypt. So if he's hiding, I mean, I think that is a legitimate claim by certain sects out there that use that verse about him fleeing to Egypt because even as a baby, for him to be hidden in Egypt, he would have to look like the Egyptians, the original Egyptians, not the Egyptians of today, because scientifically proven the Egyptians of today are mixed.
That's
Yeah, but
true.
he was
They're not.
hiding because the guy was trying to kill him.
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to say though is you would not blend in with a country that's full of people that don't look like you. Is what I'm trying to say. For Herod not to find him,
Right.
he would have had to look like a Hamite, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
He would have to look at least as dark as an Ethiopian at least of today, to blend in with that country, because back then it was not all mixed. You didn't have mixed people in lands back then in the first century. You had, Ethiopia came forth from the patriarch Ham of Noah's lineage. Ham found Ethiopia. Ham found Egypt. The Egyptians were basically Ethiopians, the original Egyptians, and you can prove that with history. They were originally Ethiopians, but what happened was you had Arabs coming in eventually, mixing in with them, and what we know of today as quote unquote Egyptians is not what they would have looked like in ancient times. So go ahead, brother. I know you're low on battery, so I want you to get in what you want to get in. Go ahead.
No worries, man. I'll get in whatever Abba allows me to get in. What I was gonna say is that one person might make the they might make the argument that, well, maybe Herod didn't go all the way to Egypt. Maybe he couldn't go to Egypt. Maybe he had no jurisdiction there. To that I'm saying, well, then you also have Yehusuf or Joseph, where his brothers came to him when he was in charge of Matzraim, and they didn't even recognize him. They took him for a Mitzrite, so he had to have been the same color as the Mitzrites for that to occur.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So I have a question. So Joseph and Mary, what were they? Okay, so this is my question. Yahushua was born by the spirit of Yah that impregnated Miriam, but he came out like his parents, Miriam and Joseph. What were they? Were they also Hebrews, or that's something I never knew?
Yeah. Joseph and Mary were both
Line of David.
even though he would have gotten no genetics technically from his dad, but because he was his stepdad basically, but but just for the sake of argument, like you were asking, both of them are of the same lineage. If you go to Matthew 1, we can go to Matthew 1 and show people that are listening on the recording here and on YouTube that his whole lineage is from Judah, specifically from Judah. So they would have, regardless whether you look at the chromosomes from the father or the mother, both of them are from the same tribe. So, if he was fully a human like me or Joshua, just for the sake of argument, I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying hypothetical, he would have been 110, not 110, but 100% Judean blood. So he would have been from his dad and his mom. Now, since he was born of Yahuwah's Ruach, the chromosomes from his mother, he got Judean, the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Yehuda, he got from his mother. And the other chromosomes from the dad, obviously, is himself, the Ruach. So the male chromosomes came from the Ruach HaKadosh. And so that's where people get. I know you're not asking about that, but I just want to fully explain it to people. So in short answer, he's Judean. He's Yahudim. He was a Yahudim ethnically, and that's why it says he came to his own. Right, the Pharisees were Yahudim, came to his own. They did not receive him. Now, does that mean no Pharisee received him? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm trying to say is, for them to be of his own genetically, he would have had to be a Yahudim. Matter of fact, for him to be the Messiah, and I think this is what brother's about to talk about, the brother Yahushua is about to talk about, is he would have to be from Judah's line. He can't be from any other line. This is why books like the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs is not scripture. Okay, nowhere in prophecy is he supposed to be from Levi. Nowhere. Okay, it's very clear. Scripture's very clear on that. He had to be from Judah's physical loins. Okay, the only way you get that is from Mary. Mary was of the seed of the woman. She was the seed of the Messiah. She essentially was a Israelite by the tribe of Judah. He comes through Mary's womb. That's why Genesis 3:15, by the way, says this her seed. It says the seed of the woman, not a seed of a man, because this is a different birth than any other birth. There was no male seed as far as human seed goes, there was no male seed in her to create the baby. The Ruach HaKodesh directly made her pregnant without any sexual anything happening. That's why Genesis 3:15 says what it says. It's the first ever messianic prophecy, if that makes any sense. So, but he was Judean. He had to be. If he's not, he can't be the Messiah. So that's the way it goes. And just to show you I'm not making this stuff up, if you go to Genesis 49:10, we'll go there real quick just to prove to you what I'm talking about is correct. Okay, so Genesis 49, verse 10. A ruler shall not fail from where? Judah, nor a prince from whose loins? His loins, until there come the things that are stored up for who? Him, meaning Judah, and he is the expectation of the Gentiles, meaning through Judah will come the Messiah, essentially. And even the Jewish people today know this. They ignore this verse. They ignore the fact that the Messiah has to be Jewish, because a lot of them now, they don't want to look at prophecy and everything. They don't want to look at the fact that the Messiah would have to prove his genealogy. He can't just claim to be the Messiah, and all that. So go ahead, brother.
Yeah, to your point, with him having to come from Yehuda and not from Levi, or from Yehuda and Levi, this is the importance of making sure that you read your scriptures and having actually read it from cover to cover. If you haven't read it from cover to cover, then how do you know the context of what you're reading? And this is the issue that we see within Yasharal, that you have people bringing in books like the Testament of the Patriarchs, and some of the Zadokite scrolls, all these books that talk about the Messiah coming from Judah and from Levi. If you would just read your scriptures, you see that the renewed covenant says that it clearly tells us that he didn't come from Levi. So it's just read your people.
And to add to brother's point, it doesn't matter, because I know some people will be pulling up the strong man argument. Well, what version are you talking about? Every version has Judah, just by the way. You could take the Latin Vulgate even, okay, which funny enough is word for word identical with the Septuagint, just for those that are interested. This is how the Catholic Bible reads. The scepter from Judah and the leader from his thigh will not be taken away until he who will be sent arrives, and he will be the expectation of the Gentiles. So even the Vulgate almost has it word for word with the Septuagint. The Aramaic Targums are a little bit different, but like I said, they all say Judah. They all say Judah's loins. They all say
just to clarify, I wasn't really asking about his lineage regarding the tribe. I was asking about the physical, because you mentioned that he had to probably be really dark skinned. So my question was not in relations to what tribe was he from or what lineage was he from, but I was asking about the physical aspect of Miriam, of course, because she was the one that birthed him or had him. So my question was about the physicalness about her. What did she look like? That was said about the color of the skin. A lot of people say that because he was from the Middle East, that he was pretty dark skinned with olive skin and dark curly hair, but nothing is said about his physical appearance.
Oh no,
all in the scripture.
Yeah, but like I said, for you to hide in Ham, the land of Ham, you have to be as dark as Ham. Logically, if Joseph was to hide in the land of Ham, he has to be as dark as Ham. So I think a little bit of common sense here should be enough, sis. The fact of the matter is, this is the way melanin works. Where you live is how dark you're going to be. We as Caucasians are as bright as we are with our skin because we live in a land that doesn't get as much sunlight. It's very scientific. It's very simple and scientific. So anyone that wants to contend that they wouldn't have been dark skinned, all you gotta do is research geography, research the history of what the original Egyptians looked like. It says he was hidden in Egypt for a certain amount of time. They couldn't find him. There, Joseph was not being able to be distinguished from the Egyptians. He looked exactly like the Egyptians. It's not just talking about makeup. I know a lot of people want to use that straw man's argument. No, that's not what it was talking about. It's talking about they didn't notice their brother in the
But
midst
brother,
of.
they could also say that the father protected him and shielded him also.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with not recognizing him. That has nothing to do with that. The point, sis, is they didn't physically recognize him. They couldn't distinguish him from the Hamites. That's the point. And we have to accept this, that these people, the original people of the book, were dark skinned. That's just the way it goes. That's the idea of white Israelites is Hollywood.
Yeah, it's true.
That is whitewashing. Okay, that's
true.
historical whitewashing. There is no proof at any point in time that Europeans, as a whole, were from the line of Judah. I'm not saying that there isn't a mixture at this point. That some Europeans could have some from Judah's line, but at first century AD,
right,
for them to be that light skinned is very unlikely.
Yeah.
Very unlikely. And the point is, you didn't even have Ashkenazi Jews at 100 AD or even before that. You didn't even have mixtures going on with the Ashkenazi people going on at that point. So the claim that and again, I understand the whole argument. I used to argue it that, well, they looked like the Arabs. The thing was, Arabs didn't originally look like that. That's from mixing. They didn't. The Egyptians didn't originally look like olive skin. If you do your research, like I said, what was Ham? Ethiopia. And multiple times in scripture it says Egypt is the land of Ham, not Aram, not Aramea or the Arabics. The original land of Egypt was filled with Ethiopians.
Yeah.
So for you to hide there, you have to look like Ethiopians. So I would think by extension, if Yahusha was that dark to hide there, Mary and Joseph would have had to be that dark. I think by just simple extrapolation, as they would call it, it's just common sense. That's what it is. The idea, though, that you have these pale white Judeans, that only became a thing like in the 1940s. And with the Russians and all that coming over here, that wasn't even a thing. Like a matter of fact, there's certain sects of Judaism that are very dark skinned. Okay, I don't even want to go into this whole rabbit trail, but you've got the Yemenites. They look even darker than modern day Egyptians. You got the Samaritan communities, right? The Samaritans who have the Samaritan Pentateuch in their synagogues. They look very dark skinned. They look like almost Indian. Okay. So again, like, why is the Ashkenazis the only sect over there that's pale white like me and my mother? And we're Italians. We have no Judean, as far as we know, we have no Judean blood in us. We're pale white. A Judean should not look like us. Number one, geography would prove they shouldn't look like us. Number two, if they're really from Judah. I mean, again, I'm not discounting mixtures, but I'm saying we're talking about the original people of the book.
Yeah.
Originally, genetically, they would have been dark-skinned people. That it's just
can't even go the route. I'm sorry.
No. It's just that brother Joshua's
I'm sorry.
His phone is going to die soon. I don't want. Go ahead, brother. I don't know if you. Oh, okay, that was an old hand. But anyway, just to explain, yes, I truly believe Miriam was dark-skinned, and so was Joseph. And this proves in Song of Songs, it says it right here. Whoever his wife is that he's talking about, she's calling herself black. I'm just saying, if we take what the scripture says right here, he's even married to a dark-skinned woman. So, do I know for sure that this woman is from Judah? I don't know. But the point is, whoever he's talking about here is saying, I'm black, I'm beautiful. Whoever's the woman that is being talked about. And it says, oh, daughters of Jerusalem. So again, it's linking black and beautiful to daughters of Jerusalem. Go ahead, brother.
To add to that, you have quite a few other verses that would say the exact same thing. um, Lamentations 5:10, our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. There was a famine, that means they're spending more time outside trying to gather
Yeah.
what little skin. So their skin was black, right? What? White people, we turn red. We don't turn. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why personally I know there's I don't want to get into any arguments. This is why I do believe that land of Israel is the original land of Israel. Because I know there's certain
Yeah.
arguments out there that want to say that, all I get it, our maps have been changed. I'm not denying that. I'm not arguing with that. But to say it's been changed to the point where that land is not the land anymore and that continent is not where they
Yeah.
lived, why are all the people that are of that ethnicity, that color over there? To me, it's a little suspect to say that it would be on the to that original Israel would be in the land in the continent that we call today Europe. So it's a little suspect to me. I don't know. Go ahead, brother.
the other verse would be Job 30, verse 30. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, you can make the argument that this guy never really said that. There are videos that try to debunk whether he said it. I'll let that be. Y'all can decide that yourself. But it was the president of Egypt, Gamal Nasser, who supposedly said, that the Jews will never be able to live in the land of Israel in peace because you left black and came back white.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Why would he? And to brother's point, why would he have to lie? He has no stake in this race, as the old saying goes. He has no, it's a Gentile Egyptian president saying this. Why would he care to lie about that? He has no stake in that land. He doesn't care about that land. He's just being honest.
Mhm.
That's what I think that statement is. He's just being honest. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, but if you as a Caucasian person if you want to do this for yourself, go live in that continent of the world for about 5-10 years and see if you're still this white as me and my mom.
Mhm.
I dare you, you will not be. It is impossible for people as white as me and my mom, as you see on camera, to live in that area and be this color.
Mhm.
It's impossible. It just doesn't happen. That's basic geography. Go ahead, mom.
Yeah, I just wanted to give another example of this whole phenomenon of the fact that your skin does have to do with the area that you're living in. I mean, we could just say, Doug and I are Italian, okay? If I put forth for you a Northern Italian woman and a Sicilian woman, okay?
Way different.
Big difference.
Way different.
Big difference. A Sicilian is going to have such dark, really dark olive skin, not even olive like we are, but really dark. And a northern Italian woman, she probably has blonde hair and blue eyes. And that's just the fact. Most of those, they call them Nobili Adon. They're all blonde haired women because Switzerland is right above Italy. So that's the mixture that you have. And
also genetically you have them have a remote amount of Hamite blood in them.
Right.
Versus with the Napolitans, like you were talking about, they're mixed with other European ethnicity.
Poland or Russia.
No, they're mixed with the Swedish.
The Swedish, yeah.
They're Swedish. Yeah. So like
which is right above
the
them,
like
too.
blonde hair, white Italians.
Yes.
They're mixed with the Swedish from up north. And then you have the Sicilians are sometimes not even considered Italians. Like they don't even consider themselves Italians because the Napolitans would call them in essence monkeys. Okay. They because they're mixed with Ethiopian. They're mixed. They're my nationality is mixed. I'm Sicilian. That's why I think I have a little bit more than my mom as far as Sicilian is concerned, because I noticed
he does.
Even when I don't, if you were here and looked at my arms almost look like a tannish brown all year round.
I have
some parts of my body are like actually permanently tan.
Yeah, no, he's darker than I am, definitely.
So there's two things that really affect your melanin: your genealogy and where you live. And sometimes it's a mixture of both. And that's why, but generally speaking, geography is what has to do with it. That's pretty much it. It's pretty much where you live, that's what you're going to look like. And so that's just the way it goes. I guess Yahuwah, you could say Yahuwah made our bodies that way to adapt. I'm not saying I believe in evolution. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is adaptation technically is not evolution. The idea that Yahuwah created our bodies to adapt to sunlight, it's not evolution. It's not the same thing.
No.
It's the idea that Yahuwah gave us the ability with our skin and our bodies to adapt to whatever climate we're in, wherever, it's that basic concept. But again, like I said, it's not a big, huge doctrine or a huge deal, but it is something to take note of what we just read about here. So, and like Sister Marissa said, it is a possibility. I was thinking about that too, that it could be Sheba. It could be the Queen of Sheba. It's very possible, even though we don't know for a fact that they had a relationship. It is a big time rabbinical legend. We don't know for a fact that he actually had any type of intimate relationship with her.
But chances are good.
Yeah,
chances are good.
The closest I've seen to any proof is Mishnaic tradition, oral tradition, that's what happened supposedly, and that he had, which actually would prove my point even more, because then you have Ham mixing with Judah. So actually, then you have Judeans even coming forth from the Ethiopians, if that's the case. Not saying it's true. I'm just saying if that Mishnaic tale is true, then you have certain Ethiopians that are part Judean now. So, and like I said, I'm not denying that there is a small percentage of people out in that land today that are light-skinned and have a little bit of Yahudim blood in them. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying the majority of them don't. There's been Harvard studies, majority of them don't. And so we also have to look at that and the facts of the matter. Real science doesn't lie. Real geography doesn't lie. And it agrees with the Bible. Most importantly. So anyway, so again, I'm pretty sure that there's other verses like that, like Job 30 and stuff like that. Just the fact that, and again, another thing too is Ham was, even though he's not of Shem's line, Shem was his brother, so they shouldn't look that much different from one another. That's another thing too. If you really think about it, Shem, Abraham, Israel. Shem was the brother of Ham. Ham, Shem, Japheth. Okay, Japheth, the reason I believe Japheth became what we know as a lot of the white European nations had a lot of intermingling going on. There was a lot of intermingling. There was a lot of, even with Esau and all that, he was intermingling with the Horites and this and that. And Japheth, for whatever reason, I think probably because of geography, where the Japheth fights went, he started losing melanin in his skin because if I remember correctly, Japheth, they went far, far north. They went way away from the land of Israel. So they would have went far enough to where, you start have a lot lighter tints of melanin. Plus the fact that the Russians came from him. We know Russia, how light skinned they are. A lot of those European nations go back to Japheth. The Grecians go back to him even. Yavon, I think, actually was the actual father of the Greeks, where it talks about in Genesis 10 and Yavon and all that. So the Jewish tradition would pin him as their ancestor. And so you have all these European nations eventually, because of migration and intermingling, they get whiter and whiter and whiter until now you have such a disparagement of melanin. But I don't think even at first there was that big disparagement of melanin, because remember in Genesis 10, they were all in one land. They went from, after the flood, Noah and his 3 sons and his wife were in the same land after they got out of the ark. So all of them, since they came from the same father and mother, would have been the same color. But because Japheth went so far away with the lands that he took over, eventually after a while, you start adapting to your climate. Your skin will start getting lighter and lighter, and that's just basic science. So that's how I would explain to someone how Japheth became so white, like his descendants became so white, is because they lived in northern climates. They didn't really live in like a African type of continent or climate anymore. So they moved to other lands where the weather was totally different. Sun exposure was totally different. So if that makes any sense. Go ahead, brother. After you, I think we'll get going.
Yeah. Two things. You mentioned that you don't believe in evolution. Not, but a lot of people don't realize that there are two different types of evolution. There's microevolution and then there's macroevolution, and only one of those fits in with the Darwinian type of evolutionism. The other one, I think it's micro evolution that we would believe in, that depending on your climate, certain things can change about a person. You can adapt to your climate, not all, but that you adapt. That's I believe that's microevolution.
Okay, yeah,
Sounds right.
I would believe in that because I think Yahuwah made our bodies that way is why I would believe in that. He made us being able to adapt, to learn, even with our brains, to adapt to our climate, even psychologically. When you look at people that live in the wilderness, even they adapt. They have to adapt a certain way. They have to learn things. They have to adjust and adapt. So yeah, I definitely believe in adaptation. And there's certain things evolution takes that actually are biblical, but they try to reappropriate it. Like Darwinism, I personally believe, and this is a whole nother topic. I don't want to be guilty of taking us to a whole new rabbit trail here, but I believe Pangea possibly was a thing in the pre-flood world. That whole supercontinent, I believe that could be possible. I believe that uh, the tectonic plates thing, I'm not totally against either. That when the flood happened, the tectonic plates would have shifted and the whole earth would have changed to where you get, a lot of continents split up. I'm not totally against that. What I'm against is that evolution somehow caused that. That's what I'm against. I'm against that. It was just, a freak thing that no one caused. That's what I'm against. But as far as certain events they try to take and put into their little theory, they're taking some of Yahuwah's creation and try to stamp it into their belief system. Same thing with dinosaurs. I believe there was dinosaurs, but they weren't billions of years old. Just so on and so forth. So there's certain things that modern so-called science has tried to take from the history of this world, try to reappropriate it to their Darwinian model, and which does not even really fit with their Darwinian model, especially with dinosaurs. If you read in scripture, you see that Behemoth most likely was a sauropodic type of dinosaur. So that means that the dinosaurs would have only been maybe 6,000 to 7,000 years ago that they were created, rather than millions and billions and trillions of years. So, but anyway, go ahead, bro. I don't know if that's an old hand or a new hand.
No, new hand. You mentioned Solomon or Solomon. I would say that I think that that's just myth. It's legend. I don't think that it really fits in with scripture. And the reason is, when you look at the timing of when the Queen of Sheba came, that was at Solomon's highest. That was at his peak. He was still walking in righteousness.
Yeah.
He hadn't transgressed at that point. And so, unless he took her for a wife, I don't think he would be sleeping with her. Because if he slept with her and then she went back to her place and neither of them were married, there was no marriage. That's fornication. So I think
True. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. I agree with you 100%. I think there's a lot lacking in that legend. I think one of the reasons that it's promoted so much is because you have the Ethiopian church, and that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. They want to claim to be real Yahudim and all that, and that's a whole nother. And again, we're not saying every dark-skinned person is a Judean. I want to make that very clear. Very clear. All I'm trying to say is that they look similar to the Hamites. I'm not saying they're Hamites, because I know there's a doctrine like that floating around that every dark-skinned person is from Judah. I don't believe that. I know that there's Hamites that are completely Hamite. If they're 100% Hamite, they can't be from Shem. So I honestly know that, and I acknowledge that. So I just want to make it very clear, because when you get into topics like these, there's always these extremes that people get into. So I'm acknowledging all that, but I am saying at the same time, generally speaking, the people of that land over there, which I do believe to be the true land, original land of Israel over there, they would have been as dark skinned as people of that continent. Is all I was trying to say. There, you can't have them looking like a Roman, not being in Rome or any part of the earth where Rome was. It just doesn't make any sense. Or, when you look at a lot of these movies, they portray the Israelites to look like me, my mom, Dennis, where a lot of us we're living in a completely different climate than what the Israelites looked like. And in ancient times, there was a lot less mixing. There was a lot less mixing. It would have been impossible at that point for them to look as light skinned as us. It would have been almost impossible. You're in an area where you're in the sun almost 100% of the time. It's, so that's all I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say historically, geographically, that's what we see, is that they looked a lot like the original Egyptians. I'm not saying that they shared the same, genetics as the original Egyptians. Obviously, Hamites are not Shemites, obviously. So I just want to make very clear. Is that New Hand, brother?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that if unless you unless you whitewash Yashral, you can't sell a white Caesar Borgia JC.
That was another thing too. We have to acknowledge is that Christianity was a Gentile European religion, hijacking the scriptures and trying to make the people of the scriptures fit them.
Yeah.
Essentially, is what happened. Same thing with Judaism, when you had these Ashkenazis that looked a certain way because they were a mix of, I forget what exact. I know they're Khazar mixed with something else, but point is that the Khazars did not look like, the Yahudim ever at any point. The Khazars, they took over the land of Israel when the original people were kicked out in 70 AD. At some point, you had these Khazar Ashkenazis come over there and claim to be the people of the book. So they would want the whitewashing just as much, if you really think about it. Judaism would want it just as much, especially modern day rabbinical Judaism, with no DNA testing. And no, I totally get it. We even have brothers and sisters that are light skinned that have some Judean blood deep in their ancestry. I get it, but as far as ancient times we're talking about, and way, way, way back then originally, that would have not really been a probability, because you didn't have the colonialism, you didn't have the mixing, you really didn't have a lot of that back then. You didn't really have, Japheth intermingling with Shem at that point. You had, so that happened a lot later on, like 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe the 1940s to the 1960s, you would have some of that. But as far as ancient times and Yahusha's time, that's very unlikely. That's just it's very unlikely. So that's all I'm trying to say, is that the people of this book, back when the book was written, the people that were in this book, that Yahuwah chose as his people to write his righteous word, they were of that complexion, and it's just, you can't get away from it. And so that's just the way it is. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. I'm proud to be grafted in to that original nation. I have no problem with that. I have no problem admitting that I came from a pagan Gentile lineage and I've been grafted in. I have no problem admitting that. But anyway, moving on. I don't want to, unless you got something to add, bro. We're gonna
Yeah, quick
go ahead.
to take too long, but I wanted to expound on that, because that seems to be something that, that's definitely something that I've struggled with in the past of like, man, like it would be so cool to actually be Yashral and not to be grafted in, and that's something that will had to correct me on. Um, you know, wow, I'll come back. I just lost my train of
Mhm. I got you though. I know all of us have experienced it. All of us have wanted it because we see that these are our spiritual ancestors to a certain extent. These are the original Israelites, and we want to be like them. So we also though have to look at the full picture here though too, because they were not perfect just like we're not perfect, and they had issues
Yeah.
spiritually just like
Yeah.
we do. So
That's right.
we kind of idolize the prophets of old and
Mhm.
the Israelites of old like there wasn't any issues. The closest you get to a perfect prophet really was Enoch, and no, I mean even Enoch, I'm pretty sure had issues. Even Yahuwah had to correct him a little bit about secluding himself, and almost like a monk type of behavior in the book of Enoch. And he's like, "Listen, you can't hide from the children of men. I want you to bring my message. I want you to bring the good news. Hey, you can't be secluding yourself." So there's always been, the thing is, the Israelites, even the super righteous ones, they had there's always the flesh there. We're not the only ones to struggle with the flesh. So that's kind of the point. So, yeah, definitely don't be ashamed of your ethnicity. Yahuwah chose you to be a ethnicity of whatever you are for a reason. They're most likely for Yahuwah's esteem, to show that Yahuwah can take anyone. He can take anyone of the most Gentile lineage and become one of his children. And that's what the whole Basor is really about when you really look at it. It's like, the old saying, "You're never too far gone." And so anyway, but yeah, I think for time's sake, I'll do chapter 2 unless we got anything else to get into here. I don't know if is that an old hand brother or a new?
I was gonna say that if we remember, Abraham was also taken
Right.
and then Yasharal was never selected because of their righteousness. Yasharal was Yahuwah's esteem, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's see here. So, Song of Songs, chapter 2. I am a flower of the plain, a lily of the valleys. As a lily among brambles, so is my mate among the daughters. As an apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my brother kin among the sons. I yearned and sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet in my throat. Bring me into a house of wine, array lover over me. Support me with raisin cakes, bolster me with apples. I think raisin cakes were very big in, like, it was a very intimate fruit, because you see, I think Israel later on, Yahuwah always uses that as like, there's certain fruit that Israel gave to Baal when Yahuwah was rebuking Israel. I think raisin cakes might have been one of them, or he talks about the honey and the oil. He's like, you forgot that I gave you the honey and the oil and all that. For I am wounded with love. His left hand will be under my head. His right will embrace me. I have, what does adjure, Mom? I forget what that word does. That mean
Azure?
adjured you? Does that mean to command you?
How's that spelled? Because
A
it's not
D
in.
J U R E
I'm
D.
not sure, honey. I'm really
Because
not
I've
sure.
seen that in like the Middle English Bibles. I adjure you, oh daughters of Jerusalem. I think that means to command, or to, I guess, to proclaim something, maybe to come listen. Um, by the powers and the forces of the field, and I really don't like how the net LXX is reading here. It's very weird with terminology. That you do not stir up or awaken love until I it wills. My brother's kin's voice, look, he has come, leaping upon the mountains, bounding over the hills. My brother's kin is like a gazelle, fawn of the stags. in the mountains of Bethel. That's interesting. So now a fawn's a baby, right? A fawn of the
Right.
stags.
If you adjure someone, you're
Yeah.
urging
So
or
that
requiring them
so
to
that
do
would be a
something.
baby deer it's talking about
Yeah. Hmm.
of the mountains of Bethel. That's interesting. Look here, he stands behind our wall, peering through the windows, peeping through the lattices. My brother's kin responds and says to me, "Arise, come to my mate, my fair one, my dove. For look, winter's past, the rain has left, it went on its own, the flowers have appeared on the earth, pruning time has come, the turtle dove's voice has been heard in our land." That's interesting. So the turtle dove's voice, that could be referring to the Ruach, because we know that Yahuwah's spirit looked like a dove when it entered Yahusha at the baptism, at the immersion. So that's kind of interesting. The turtle dove's voice. The fig tree has put forth its figs. The vines are in blossom, and they have given forth fragrance. Arise, come, my mate, my fair one, my fair one, my dove in the rock shelter near the outer wall. Show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet, and your voice, or not voice, your face is lovely. Catch us foxes, little ones that ruin vineyards, and our vines are in blossom. My brother's kin is mine, and I am his who pastures his flock among the lilies. Until the day breathes and he shadows, oh my bad, and the shadows stir. Turn my brother's kin, be like the gazelle or a fawn of the stags on the mountains with glens. So again, this is a lot of poetic, metaphorical language that Solomon and his wife, I'm assuming that they're using like animals and birds to describe one
Hmm.
another, which you see actually in other literature. Like a lot of people that want to reject Enoch, Enoch shows that of relating people to animals in a parable sense, and you'll see that in, I think there's one or two chapters in Ezekiel as well that do that as well. So it's very interesting. He's doing this here. Um, Yeah, so he's referring to her as a baby deer. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to start being a little bit more cautious to use this net version of the LXX in certain books because the modern English I just don't like powers and forces of the field. I don't know what the heck they're supposed to be talking about there. I'm gonna look at the Bretons real quick and see if it says that because that's a little weird. Let's see here. It's a little strange, in my opinion. Let's see here. Sword. Psalm of Songs, chapter 2, verse 7. I just want to know what it means by powers and virtues of the field. What is it talking about? Okay, Greek for powers here is dunamis, strength. Okay, strength is a little bit more accurate. I would say strength makes more sense by the I see why they didn't put strength twice. Okay. Just force sounds weird like when you're talking about a field. Like you're talking about grass. Like so it would make more sense to me if they would have said by the strength and the ability of the I don't know. It's just a very weird verse. I know it's got to be parabolic and metaphoric, but it's like why they use those specific words. I hate to say it, the Masoretic makes a little bit more sense in this verse. I adjure you, daughters of Jerusalem, by the roes or by the hinds of the field, that you do not stir up nor awaken love until it so desires. Just the language of the Hebrew there makes a little bit more sense. Um, yeah. Huh. Dough is that's interesting. I didn't know that. Ayala means doe in Hebrew. Okay. Interesting. Female deer. Okay.
Doe deer. Male deer.
I didn't know that that word is Allah. That's interesting. Or Ayala, I should say. It's interesting. But I hate to say it, the Masoretic makes more sense in that verse. I really don't like to give them credit, but those are the field that you won't awaken or arouse love before its proper time. Yeah, the ISV I really like. The International Standard Version says, "Swear to me, young women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, that you won't awaken or arouse love before its proper time," rather than force or strength. Which I don't know. It seems like a little bit. It seems almost like the Greek didn't have the right word for what they were trying to translate. Or I know the Greek language is not exactly um, equal to the Hebrew, so that's where it kind of gets confusing. Is there's going to be certain words that are not exactly equal, um, and it's gonna that could cause a translation issue possibly. Either that or the translators of the Septuagint were taking something literal and trying to make it allegorical. Just tell them if something's there, we'll get it later.
Hello? Okay, thank you. We'll pick it up a little later, okay? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, that's all I wanted to comment there. Other than that, um, there wasn't anything really too out of the norm here in this chapter. He also compares his woman to flowers. That's interesting. Now, I do have to take a correction here. I did not notice this, but he's comparing her to apple trees. So maybe I'm wrong about apple trees not being in that region of the world. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Because verse 3 says, "As an apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my," or no, this is her speaking. Okay. "So is my brother kin among the sons. I yearned and sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet in my throat." Now, I wonder if that's allegorical too, because we know, right, Yahuwah, whose shadow do we sit under? As Yahuwah's people, we sit under the shadow of his wings, metaphorically. The shadow of the Almighty, Psalms 91.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if a lot of that is metaphorical. Either way, Mom, it seems like there might be apple trees in Africa. So that I was like, that's interesting. So I might have to correct myself on that. All right. So unless anyone else has anything to add, I think that might be the end of today's study. So there's not much I can really expound upon here. Um, Other than I thought it's interesting, it talks about the mountains of Bethel and stuff like that. And by the way, Bethel was like one of the first places Yahuwah commanded to, I think, before the Levitical priesthood. I think Yahuwah commanded people to make altars at, um, to give him sacrifices in like the earlier parts in Genesis. Like Bethel was, I think, doesn't it mean house of Elohim, Mom?
I think so.
Yeah, so that was like almost like a sacred ground where so anyway, Huh. Verse 14 is interesting. That's the last thing I wanted to mention. My dove in the rock shelter. Who's the rock?
Right.
So he's calling us his dove, which is kind of interesting. And again, you have the parallel between the rock is Yahusha, dove symbolically represents the Ruach. It's kind of interesting. And in prophecy it talks about the bride. She washed her robe. So why he might be symbolizing us with the dove is that he desires a pure bride that doesn't have any defects and all that. Other than that, I think that's it for today, guys. So I appreciate everyone stopping by, all of you that watched and listened in on the live here. I really appreciate it. If you guys are looking for fellowship, please feel free to reach out. And just want to say to brothers and sisters out there that maybe this is your first year of not celebrating these holidays and you're feeling drained, just look at it like Yahuwah's already got you through the 3/4 of this month already. You're almost done, guys. Just, try to focus on Yahuwah and Yahusha and don't try to think about this time of year so much.
Yeah.
Because I know it's tough. This is a depressing time of year. I get it. Just try to press on. All right. Shabbat Shalom, guys. Have a great rest of Yahuwah, Yahusha Shabbat. Yahuwah willing, Yahusha willing. See you guys.